It was a cold morning in January, the kind of day in Knoxville when the fog hangs low over the Tennessee River, and the streets feel like they're holding secrets. Marlene stood outside the Piggly Wiggly on Magnolia Avenue, holding 2 plastic bags full of discount groceries, the cold biting at her fingertips. A group of high school kids passed by, laughing. One of them, a tall boy with a University of Tennessee hoodie, slowed just enough to smirk and whisper loudly to his friend, "Hope she ain't planning to eat all that herself." They all laughed. Marlene didn't flinch. She never did. That wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. At 312 pounds, Marlene had become a target for everything cruel in this town. Comments, stares, silence. But the worst part wasn't the strangers. It was the man she married. Her husband, Tommy, was born and raised in Knoxville just like she was. Back in high school, he had been charming, confident, and popular. When he first asked Marlene out, everyone was shocked. She was already heavy back then, quiet, and always trying to shrink into the background. But Tommy liked the way she made him feel. In control. Over the years, his charm faded. What remained was bitterness and a sharp tongue. "You think people respect me when they see you waddling behind me?" he said once, slamming the car door after church on a Sunday morning. Marlene had worn her best blue dress that day. She'd even curled her hair. But Tommy made sure she felt like nothing before they even got home. He never hit her. Not physically. But he knew how to wound her with words that stuck longer than bruises ever could. "You ain't sick," he once snapped while she sat on the couch with chest pain. "You're just fat. Get up and stop playing weak." Still, she cooked. Still, she smiled. Still, she stayed. Most days, she worked at a small laundromat just off Magnolia. The pay was low, but it covered some groceries and helped with the bills. Tommy handled the rest of the finances, mostly to control her. She didn't even have her own bank account. "You don't know how to manage money," he'd say. "You'd waste it on food." There were nights Marlene would sneak into the bathroom just to cry. But even in the pain, she clung to hope. She dreamed of something better, not just for herself, but for the girl she used to be. The girl who believed in love, in building a life full of values, health, and quiet prosperity. But Knoxville was a small town. People talked. At church, at the diner, even at the gas station, folks whispered things like, "Why is she still with him?" Or, "Maybe she likes being pitied." No one really knew what it felt like to be invisible yet always seen, to be mocked and then blamed for being too sensitive. And yet, she endured. Until one Thursday in late March, around 7:30 in the morning, Marlene got the call. Tommy had died. Sudden heart attack while driving to work. No goodbyes, no final words, just gone. Her first reaction wasn't sadness. It was silence, then guilt, then something unexpected, relief. At the funeral, people came up and said the usual. "He was a good man. You were lucky to have him. He loved you in his own way." Marlene smiled and nodded, but inside, something had shifted. Later that night, she sat alone on their small porch, the spring air still carrying the chill of winter. Her body ached, but her heart, it stirred with something new. Freedom. It scared her, and it thrilled her. The next day, she found a sealed envelope tucked inside Tommy's top drawer. It was his will. What she read inside would set everything in motion. The envelope was cream-colored and slightly worn, sealed tight with Tommy's messy handwriting across the front. It read, "For Marlene. Only open if I'm gone." She stared at it for what felt like hours. The morning sun peeked through the window, casting a soft glow on the kitchen table, where a single cracked coffee mug still sat from the night before. Her heart thudded in her chest. like it already knew this letter wasn't some sweet goodbye. Tommy didn't do sweet. She finally broke the seal with trembling fingers. Inside was a short letter. No "I love you," no apology, just instructions. If I die, bury me next to Mama. Sell the truck, pay off the house. I know you never knew how to manage money, so I'm leaving it simple. There's $10,000 in cash in the attic. Don't spend it on food. Use it to fix yourself. Maybe lose some of that weight. People might actually respect you one day. Marlene read it once, then again. Then she folded it back up, real slow. Tears didn't come. Not this time. There it was, his final judgment, sealed and signed. Even in death, he found a way to remind her she wasn't good enough. Even from the grave, Tommy wanted control. But something cracked inside her. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was something deeper, something older, like a door unlocking that had been sealed shut for decades. That afternoon, Marlene went up into the attic. She hadn't been up there in years. The wooden stairs creaked under her weight, each step a reminder of how far she'd fallen from the girl she used to be. She found the money. $10,000 in neat stacks inside an old shoebox. The smell of dust, insulation, and old regret filled the space. But the money didn't make her feel shame. It made her feel power. It was the first time in years she held something in her hands that gave her a choice. And that night, as the cicadas hummed in the thick Tennessee air, she didn't cry. She sat on the porch with a pen and notepad and wrote 3 simple goals. 1, get healthy. 2, build my own money. 3, never let anyone make me feel small again. That was the beginning. The next morning, Marlene walked into a local gym on the edge of town. Folks stopped and stared. She didn't care. A young trainer named Angie looked up from the counter. "Hey there," she smiled. "You here for someone?" "No," Marlene said. "I'm here for me." Angie didn't laugh. She nodded. "All right, let's get you started then." That first workout was hell. Just walking on the treadmill for 5 minutes left Marlene breathless and sweaty. But she came back the next day. And the day after that, 1 step at a time, 1 pound at a time. She cleaned out the kitchen. No more processed junk. No more sodas. She met with a local nutritionist who helped her build real meals, balanced, nourishing, and focused on rebuilding her health from the inside out. By the end of the first month, she was down 11 pounds. Her ankles hurt less. Her breathing had improved. And for the first time in years, she started to feel like her life wasn't just happening to her. It was hers again. She started tracking every dollar. She opened her first bank account. She began researching ways to invest, to save, to grow her own sense of prosperity. She didn't want to just lose weight. She wanted wealth, not just in money, but in spirit, in purpose, in pride. At church, people started whispering again. Only this time, it was different. "You see Marlene lately? She's looking good, ain't she? She's got a glow about her now." But she didn't care about their whispers, not anymore, because for the first time in her life, she was learning her values didn't depend on what people said about her. They came from inside. And though she still heard Tommy's voice in her head sometimes, cruel, cold, reminding her of what she'd been, she learned to speak louder than that voice. She'd whisper to herself in the mirror, "I'm not broken, I'm becoming." And every pound she lost wasn't just about size. It was a piece of shame falling away, a layer of pain peeling back, a wall she was tearing down brick by brick. By the end of the 3rd month, she had lost 38 pounds, and she hadn't even started yet. By July of 2015, the Knoxville heat was thick and heavy, the kind that clung to your skin like regret. But Marlene was sweating for a reason now, and it wasn't shame. It was effort. It was grit. It was the burn of a woman fighting her way out of a life that nearly buried her. At 274 pounds, she still had a long way to go. But she walked different now. Shoulders back, chin up. Like she finally remembered she had a spine. One afternoon, after a brutal workout, Angie tossed Marlene a towel and said, "You know, I've trained a lot of people, but I've never seen someone do what you're doing." Marlene looked up, wiping the sweat from her face. "What's that?" "Change everything," Angie said. "Not just your body, your life." Marlene gave a soft smile. "I spent over 20 years shrinking for a man who made me feel small. I'm not shrinking no more. I'm rebuilding." Her voice was steady. No anger, just truth. "The money from the attic?" She still had over $8,000, but she didn't touch a dime unless it added to her health, her prosperity, or her peace of mind. She paid for a food prep service that delivered clean, portioned meals straight to her doorstep. She invested in a used laptop and took free online finance courses at the library downtown. She learned how money really worked, not just how to spend it, but how to grow it, how to protect it, how to make it work for her, not against her. By September, she weighed 239 pounds. That was 73 pounds down. 73. One day at the laundromat, a woman named Gail, a longtime customer who used to look right through Marlene, stopped and said, "You look amazing, honey. What's your secret?" Marlene folded a towel and said, calm and honest, "I stopped carrying weight that wasn't mine." Folks started noticing her in new ways, not just because she was smaller, but because she radiated something different. Pride, peace, a quiet wealth of self-worth. But not everybody was happy to see her shine. At a local church event, her late husband's cousin, Brenda, approached with a fake smile and an iced tea in hand. "Well, look at you," Brenda said, eyes scanning Marlene's new frame. "Tommy would have loved to see you like this." Marlene took a slow sip of her water. "He had 23 years to see me. He never looked." Brenda blinked, speechless. "I ain't changing for Tommy," Marlene added. "I'm changing for me." That night, Marlene wrote in her notebook, "This is not revenge. This is resurrection." And she meant it. In the months that followed, she kept at it. She hired a local coach to help her with strength training. She started walking the greenways around Knoxville, early mornings, when the mist still floated over the sidewalks and the air smelled clean. The pounds came off slower now, but they still came. By late November, she hit 100 pounds lost. 100. She weighed 212 pounds. She still had stretch marks, still had loose skin, still had days where her knees ached and her old doubts whispered in the dark. But her values were unshakable now. She didn't just feel smaller, she felt stronger, and she had started dreaming again. She looked at her bank balance one night, just over $6,000 left from Tommy's stash, and she thought, what if I don't just survive? What if I thrive? So she walked into a beauty school the next morning and signed up for a 6-month cosmetology course. When the receptionist asked, "What made you decide to do this now?" Marlene smiled and said, "Because I'm not waiting on permission anymore." Knoxville hadn't changed, but Marlene had. And the best part? She was just getting started. By January of 2016, it had been nearly 1 full year since Tommy passed. Knoxville was in the grip of winter again, but Marlene no longer felt frozen in place. She now weighed 196 pounds. That was 116 pounds down. She had never felt so light, not just in body, but in spirit. Her mornings had rhythm now. Up by 6, lemon water, 30 minutes of movement, a warm shower. And then she'd sit by the window, journal open, writing out everything she was grateful for. I have my own money. I have my own peace. I have a future. I have my name back. Marlene had stopped using his last name on anything she signed. It was a small act, but it felt like freedom. She didn't need to carry Tommy anymore, not in her body, not in her wallet, not in her story. One morning, as she stood in line at the bank, a voice behind her said, "Marlene?" She turned. It was Lacey, a girl she went to high school with. Back then, Lacey had been part of the popular crowd, all makeup, gossip, and judgment. Marlene remembered the way Lacey used to whisper and giggle any time she passed in the hallway. Now, Lacey stared at her with wide eyes. "You look amazing. I almost didn't recognize you." Marlene smiled, polite but calm. "Well, I finally recognized myself." Lacey laughed awkwardly. "You must have had surgery or something, right?" "Nope," Marlene said. "Just old-fashioned sweat and stubbornness." Lacey's smile faded. "You married?" she asked. "Widowed," Marlene said plainly. "Oh, I'm sorry," Lacey replied. Marlene shrugged. "Don't be." That moment stuck with her all day. Not because she cared what Lacey thought. She didn't. But because it reminded her how far she'd come. She no longer lived for the approval of people who never truly saw her. She lived for her own health, her own values, and the quiet joy of walking past a mirror and smiling instead of wincing. That week, she passed her cosmetology final exams. Her hands, once clumsy and unsure, now moved with skill and care. She had a gift, not just for hair and makeup, but for making women feel seen, for reminding them they were worth something more than the world had told them. She got hired at a small salon downtown called Southern Roots. The owner, a woman named Renee, had been in the beauty business for over 25 years. "You've got good hands, Marlene," Renee said after her first week. "And a good heart. That's rare." Every Friday, Marlene set aside a portion of her pay. She was saving to open a small place of her own one day. Not big, just enough. Enough to build a quiet wealth, to build prosperity on her own terms. And she didn't stop working on her body. Every pound lost was a chapter closed. She hit 122 pounds gone by the end of February. At 190 pounds, she walked different, breathed different, dressed different. But what shocked people most was her voice. She spoke clearer now. Stronger, like someone who had fought through fire and came out holding the match. At the grocery store, the same boy who had mocked her back in January of the previous year was bagging groceries now. He didn't recognize her. "Need help out to your car, ma'am?" She looked him straight in the eye. "No, thank you. I've carried heavier things on my own." That night, she pulled the will back out, the one Tommy had left. His last words still burned on the page. "Use it to fix yourself." She had, but not the way he meant. She didn't fix her weight to earn respect. She reclaimed her body to reclaim her life. She built confidence, not just a new shape. She built dignity, not just a smaller dress size. And now she was nearly ready. She had lost 133 pounds. But more than that, she had lost the need for anyone's permission to shine. And it was time to return, not just to Knoxville, but to the very people who once pitied her, mocked her, or ignored her. The same people who had stood around her husband's casket saying she was lucky he chose her. Now, she was choosing herself. The question was, would they recognize the woman who walked back into the room? It was a warm Saturday in April when Marlene walked through the doors of the Knoxville Community Center. It had been exactly 1 year and 3 months since Tommy passed. The town was holding a fundraiser for local families, potluck tables lined with crock-pots, baked goods, and slow-cooked ribs, the smell of brown sugar and smoke hanging in the air. Marlene hadn't planned to attend. But she woke up that morning with a pull in her chest, like it was time. She stood at the entrance for a moment, scanning the crowd. People who once ignored her, people who used to whisper, faces from church, from the old neighborhood, and some who, once upon a time, made her feel like a ghost in her own skin. She stepped inside, heels clicking softly on the polished floor. She wore a soft green dress that hugged her new shape, a gold necklace that caught the light, and a quiet confidence that silenced the room faster than any voice could have. It took less than 10 seconds for the first whisper. "Is that Marlene?" "No way. She looks like a different person." The same Brenda who once snickered behind Marlene's back when she weighed over 300 pounds now stood frozen with a paper plate in hand. "Marlene? Oh my goodness, I didn't even recognize you." Marlene smiled, gentle but firm. "Funny how easy it is to go unseen until you take up less space." Brenda laughed nervously, unsure how to respond. "You look incredible. What's your secret?" "There ain't no secret," Marlene replied. "Just hard work, clean food, a lot of tears, and finally realizing my worth doesn't come from how much I weigh or who I married." That moment traveled through the room like wildfire. People came up one by one, offering shallow compliments dressed as curiosity. "How much have you lost?" "You must feel like a whole new woman." "What made you finally do it?" Marlene answered each question with calm clarity. She said she'd lost 133 pounds. She said she felt lighter, freer, not just because of her body, but because she finally lived by her own values, not someone else's judgment. And when someone asked, "Was it Tommy's death that pushed you?" she didn't flinch. It wasn't his death. It was his absence. It gave me room to finally hear myself think, to finally believe I deserved health and prosperity and peace. After an hour, she slipped outside for air. The spring breeze danced through her hair as she stood alone, looking out across the parking lot. Then she heard a voice behind her. "Marlene?" She turned. It was Pastor Glenn, the same man who had comforted Tommy at church so many Sundays, while silently watching Marlene's pain go unspoken. "I just wanted to say, I see you," he said, "and I owe you an apology. We all do. Nobody stepped in. Nobody asked. We just let it happen." Marlene's eyes didn't fill with tears. Not this time. "I used to wait for someone to speak up," she said. "Then I realized I'm someone." He nodded, humbled. Back inside, a slideshow began on the projector. Community photos, past events. One of the pictures showed her and Tommy from 2 years earlier. She looked heavy, yes, but more than that, she looked hollow, lost. A few people glanced at her, expecting her to wince. She didn't. She stared at the old image and whispered to herself, "I forgive you, but I'm not her anymore." She left early, not because she felt unwelcome, but because she didn't need to stay. On the way home, she stopped at a small lot on the edge of town. It had a "For Lease" sign in the window. It was perfect. Marlene walked up to the glass, peered inside, and saw her future. A modest little salon, soft lighting, warm colors, and a sign that would one day read, "Marlene's Chair." She took a breath and made the call. The rent was affordable. She had enough saved. It was time to invest, not just money but purpose. By the end of the week, the papers were signed. A new chapter was coming. Not a chapter written by a man who left her broken, but one written by a woman who built herself back, brick by brick, pound by pound, day by day. And Knoxville wasn't ready for what was coming next. The salon opened on the first Monday of June, 2016. It was a modest space off Central Avenue, just 3 chairs, 1 wash station, and a small counter for walk-ins. But to Marlene, it felt like a palace. She painted the walls a soft coral and placed a quote in gold letters above the mirrors. "Beauty begins the moment you decide you're enough." The name above the door read Marlene's Chair. And from the moment it opened, women came. Some were curious, some were nervous, but word spread fast. This wasn't just a place for a trim and a touch-up. It was a place to be seen, to be heard, to be healed. Every time she wrapped a cape around a woman's shoulders, Marlene would say, "You ain't broken. You're just tired. Let's fix that." By the end of the first month, she had tripled what she used to earn at the laundromat. Her first bank deposit brought tears to her eyes, not because of the money itself, but because of what it meant. She had built something with her own hands, no permission, no apology, and she still made time for herself. Early morning workouts, weekly check-ins with her nutritionist, long walks in the hills above Knoxville. She had kept the weight off, all 133 pounds of it, and her doctor even told her she had reversed her pre-diabetic numbers. Her blood pressure had leveled. Her heart was strong. Her body was healing. "This is what real health looks like," she whispered to herself one morning, looking in the mirror. Not a number, not a dress size, just strength. That summer, her story began spreading beyond town. A customer posted a before and after photo on social media, tagging her salon. The post went viral locally, then nationally. By August, she was featured in a small online magazine titled Southern Women Rising. The article was simple, honest, no flash, just her story, a woman who turned grief and shame into prosperity and opened a door for others to walk through too. The piece ended with her quote, "You can bury yourself in pain, or you can plant yourself in it and grow. I chose to grow." Phone calls started pouring in. Reporters, bloggers, even a Nashville podcast wanted to feature her. Marlene took it slow. She didn't care for spotlight, but she knew her story wasn't just hers anymore. She started hosting free Saturday workshops for women in recovery, women who had survived abuse, addiction, or years of emotional neglect. She taught them how to do hair, yes, but she also taught them about boundaries, finances, and values. "I don't care if you ever hold a pair of scissors again," she'd say, "but you are going to walk out of here knowing what you're worth." Marlene's Chair became a home. One afternoon, as she swept up after closing, a woman stood outside, hesitating by the door. Marlene opened it. "Come on in, darling. You look like you've got a story to tell." The woman nodded, teary-eyed. "I read your article. I used to weigh over 300 too. My husband left last year, said he was tired of being embarrassed." Marlene didn't blink. "I know that story. You ready to write a new one?" And just like that, another seed was planted. By October, Marlene had enough saved to hire 2 more stylists and rent the space next door. She expanded. Not for glory, but for impact. She'd started with $10,000 left in a box from a man who tried to break her spirit. Now she was building a business that reflected her soul. Real wealth, she learned, wasn't just in the bank. It was in the lives she touched, the confidence she restored, the mirrors she wiped clean, not just of smudges, but of lies women had been told for too long. And she still hadn't read Tommy's letter again. She didn't need to. She had lived her response, not in words, but in a life. And Knoxville was beginning to whisper something new, not laughter, not judgment, but respect. But by December of 2016, the first frost had come to Knoxville. Trees stood bare, mornings were sharp, and Christmas lights blinked along neighborhood porches like tiny reminders that time kept moving, whether you were ready or not. Marlene was ready. She stood outside her second salon location, keys in hand, watching her breath rise into the cold air. What started as 3 chairs and a hope had now grown into a business with employees, regulars, and a wait list 3 weeks deep. Inside, laughter and blow dryers hummed together like music. She had built a space not just of beauty, but of values, respect, dignity, healing, and yes, real, measurable prosperity. That morning she received an invitation to speak at a women's conference hosted by the Knoxville Chamber of Commerce. Her story had traveled further than she expected. A woman who had gone from being ridiculed at the Piggly Wiggly to running a full-blown enterprise. "I don't know how you did it," one organizer said over the phone, "but your story's inspiring folks across Tennessee. We'd be honored to have you." She accepted. The night before the conference, she pulled out a simple black dress. It wasn't fancy, but it fit. And more importantly, it felt like hers. At the event, the stage lights were warm, and the crowd was larger than she imagined. She stood tall, took a breath, and began. "I used to be the woman no one looked at," she said. "Or worse, the one folks looked at just to laugh. I weighed over 300 pounds. I had no savings, no voice. I believed what the world told me, that I wasn't worth much. But grief has a strange way of burning down what you thought was life, just so you can build a real one in its place." She spoke for 25 minutes. When she finished, the room stood up. Not out of pity, but respect. Afterward, a local businesswoman handed her a card. "If you ever want to expand into Nashville," she said, "call me. I believe in women who build from ashes." That night, Marlene didn't go home right away. She drove past the old house she and Tommy once shared. The porch was sagging now, the yard uncut. The house looked small, not just in size, but in memory. She parked across the street and stared. So much of her life had happened behind those walls. So much pain and silence and sacrifice. But now, it was just a house, and she was a woman who had reclaimed her name, her body, her voice, and her future. She whispered to herself, "I didn't just survive you, I outgrew you." The next day, she saw Brenda again. It happened at the bank. Marlene was waiting to deposit earnings from the new location. Brenda walked in, saw her, and paused. "Well, look at you," she said, voice tight. "You really turned things around." Marlene didn't boast. She didn't smirk. "I did what I needed to do," she said calmly. "You ever think about what you need?" Brenda blinked. "Excuse me?" "I'm just saying," Marlene said, "people don't laugh when they're happy. They laugh when they're empty. And I hope you fill your cup someday." Brenda didn't respond. But Marlene didn't need her to. She walked out of that bank with her head held high, deposit receipt in one hand, keys in the other. Not just to her car, but to her life. At home that evening, she pulled out the notebook she'd started nearly 2 years earlier, the one where she'd written those first 3 goals. 1. Get healthy. 2. Build my own money. 3. Never let anyone make me feel small again. She checked each one off in thick black ink. She'd done it. But the final goal wasn't just about Tommy. It was about every single person who ever treated her like she was disposable. And it was time for all of them to see the woman they thought would disappear rise. On the morning of January 3rd, 2017, Knoxville woke up to a blanket of soft snow. The kind that quieted everything. No cars rushing, no dogs barking. Just stillness, the sound of a town holding its breath. Marlene opened the door to her salon, flipped the sign to "Open," and turned on the lights. Inside, the space was warm, safe. A fresh pot of coffee brewed in the back, and the faint sound of country soul music played from the old speaker she'd kept since her days cleaning houses. By now, everyone in Knoxville knew who she was, and more importantly, what she stood for. She no longer had to explain herself, defend her choices, or shrink to fit anyone's expectations. She was a woman of health, wealth, and deeply rooted values, and she wore it all with pride, not apology. That day, she had one last client on her list, a walk-in. No appointment, just a call that morning asking if she'd be available. At 3 o'clock sharp, the doorbell chimed. And in walked Darlene, Tommy's sister. She looked nervous, holding her purse with both hands like it might run away. Her hair was long and tangled. Her face was tired. Marlene greeted her with a simple smile. "Hey there." I didn't know if you'd see me," Darlene said softly. "I see you now," Marlene replied. "Have a seat." Darlene eased into the chair, eyes glossy with something that wasn't just embarrassment. It was regret. "You look good," she whispered. "Thank you." "I wasn't kind to you," Darlene continued. "None of us were. We judged you, mocked you, and now, look at you." Marlene met her gaze in the mirror. "Folks see what they want to see," she said. "Back then, y'all saw a burden. But the truth is, I was surviving what most folks wouldn't have lasted a week in." Tears welled in Darlene's eyes. "I read about your salon, about the wait, the speaking gigs. I heard you helped that girl down in Chattanooga start her own business." "I did," Marlene said. "She just needed someone to believe in her." Darlene nodded, quiet. "I guess I came here hoping for a cut, but also maybe forgiveness." Marlene took a long breath, then gently draped the cape around Darlene's shoulders. "Forgiveness don't mean I forget," she said, combing through her hair. "But it means I don't carry the pain anymore. That weight ain't mine now." They sat in silence for a while, the quiet hum of the clippers, the scent of lavender conditioner, the soft shuffle of snow melting outside. By the time Marlene finished, Darlene looked 10 years lighter. "Thank you," she said, voice shaking. "You're welcome," Marlene replied. As Darlene walked out, she turned at the door. "Tommy never deserved you," she said. "But maybe all this, maybe it happened so you could become this woman." Marlene didn't respond. She didn't have to. That night, alone in her apartment, she lit a single candle, sat by the window, and opened Tommy's letter one final time. She read every word again. Not with bitterness, not with sadness, just clarity. He'd left her money. But she had built legacy. He'd left her broken. But she had rebuilt with gold. He'd shamed her. And she turned that shame into a platform that lifted others. That was her revenge. Not loud, not cruel, just thriving, in her body, in her soul, in her business, in her truth. She folded the letter one last time, slid it into a small box, and tucked it away. Not out of anger, but closure. Before bed, she logged into her business account. Deposits were strong, bills were paid. She had enough to open a third location next year. Maybe even start offering scholarships for young girls who wanted to study beauty and business, but couldn't afford it. Real riches, she'd learned, don't sit in vaults. They move through people. They heal. They grow. They restore. And Marlene, the girl who once cried in secret behind a closed bathroom door, was now a woman who walked Knoxville streets with her head high and her heart open. Her journey wasn't about weight loss. It was about worth. And she'd earned every ounce of it. And you? Have you ever lived through something that made you question your worth, only to come out stronger on the other side? Tell me below. I want to hear your story.